Hi there, this is Ulysses and we'll be going over how to populate the Krisys Motor Controller Board 7.1. This is the main board, the main PCB board, and as you can see, this is the top part and this is the bottom. The top has white lettering and white boxes and squares, each one being labeled. Depending on what label, what letter it is, will indicate what type of component it is. For example, C stands for capacitor, R stands for resistor, D stands for diode, and U stands for either voltage regulators, the chip, or something like that. So depending on what it says on the board and the schematic, that's where the parts will be placed on. Some of these squares are for jumpers or headers, like this, the J15, J12, some of these are headers, and you see them in boxes and you see a line of little circles. Those will be headers. We'll go over that in the video, which ones you need to populate, which ones you don't. This, as you can see here, you see a dotted line. This dotted line indicates the division between the intelligence section of the board and the driver section of the board. The intelligence section is where the microcontroller will be at. That'll be the brain. That's what is going to be programmed from the computer, and that will control the driver controller board. This section, and this will drive the motors. So this section here is intelligence. It'll communicate with this, and this will control your motors. Depending on what configuration you have, you could cut this before you start soldering, before you do any of that, depending on how you want your robot to be, or your device. If you want these to be separate, it can be done, but it is very important that if you are doing that, for you to do it before you solder any components on here, for the reason being that this is thick and this is strong, and it's dangerous to cut it with components on there, and you could damage the components as well. So if you are planning on doing that, cut it before you actually do any soldering. But for most projects, this will stay as in one square without being taken apart. It will look something similar to this here. That's a demonstration of how it should look once it's done. So right now we're starting with this. See, there's nothing on there, and it will look very similar to that, if not exactly to that. Very well then, we'll be going over how to populate most of this board, if actually all of it, and I'll get back to you then. Okay, so now we're gonna start doing the soldering here. This is not necessarily for you to learn how to solder, but how to populate the board. Look further for complete soldering tutorials. Here we're going to use several parts. We're going to use 2 voltage regulators. These are right here. These are the voltage regulators, and this is for connecting your power. These are 2 LEDs, light emitting diodes. They turn on, they're little lights. And here we have 4 capacitors. These are capacitors. This is give me a second here. This is the 0.33 microfarad capacitor, and the way to identify it is looking on here, and it says 3334K. And down here, similarly, how they look. But if you look down here, these 2 others are different capacitors, and if you look at them, it's going to say 104, which that is a 0.1 microfarad. So that's these 2. And how we're going to do this is that this is we're going to populate this section of the board with these. How do these 2 are different? How to distinguish between both of these voltage regulators is that if you look closely on here, one of them will say 7805 or something along those lines, and that will be the 5 volt regulator, 05. down here you'll find the other one, it'll say 7, 8, a letter probably M, and it'll say 33, which stands for 3.3 volts. So that's the difference between both of these. And on this board you'll find U1 and U5. U5 will be for the 3.3 volt and U1 will be for the 5 volts. So if you look at U1 and then you see there's a line right here that will correspond to the little tab that's sticking off. So it will go like so. Same thing with the 5 volt regulator. If you look at it, you will see that there's this little smaller rectangle here that will correspond with that back tab, and that's where that will go. Similarly, we're going to look at the capacitors. We're going to first populate capacitor number 1, C1, and we're gonna populate that with a 334 capacitor. And similarly with C7, with a 334 capacitor, 334 capacitor, which both of those are 0.33 microfarad. And we're gonna go over to the 104 capacitor, and we're gonna put it in, that looks like C0, and we're just gonna put it in there. And same thing with C2, and we put them in there. So that's how it should look once it's soldered. And right now they're wiggly because there's no solder on them. And with the purpose behind this device here is you're gonna attach this pigtail here, and this is where you connect your battery to. You could connect this, the reason behind this is you connect wires directly to here, and then you use a screwdriver to tighten this, and it'll keep them firmly on there. Where this would go depends on you, depending on how your project is going to look like. You could either put them here, 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 here. If you're using the whole board without cutting it, without using two separate, you more than likely put them here or here. You could still put it here, but it's kind of in the center, and usually you would place it at the edge so that you could connect a battery, the power source, there. Those are the options, and that's how I'm going to set it up. Okay, we're back here. This is a progress. I've soldered all these components on there, both voltage regulators, 4 capacitors, and the connector up here. Next thing to do will be connect 2 light emitting diodes, LEDs. And these will light up, little lights. But what happens with these electronic components is that these are polarized. They have polarity, that they should be connected a certain way, or else they won't work, or they will fry. So this is quite important. If you see at this little light here, the long one will be the positive, the short one will be the negative. So the positive will be connected to the positive part for future reference if you are using a light emitting diode, and the short one will be connected to the ground. On here, we're going to end up placing these LEDs here and here, these circles with a little like beveled edge to the side. I'm not sure if you can see that very well. And right here too, there's like a little beveled edge here and here as well. And the way this works is that the long lead, which is a positive, if you look on the board, there's an A on there. That's where you insert that one. So the short lead, which is the ground, will go towards the beveled edge, and that's where you insert them.
and you insert it like so. And they will be wobbly, of course, because we have not soldered the bottom part yet, and that's what we would do, and we'll get back to you. Hi there, we're back, and I have soldered on the LEDs. The next thing to do before we jump onto the main next part is to add in this switch here that I didn't mention earlier. This switch here, if you look right here, this says J2, and there's this rectangle. It's right next to where the battery connector is at, the one that I've soldered. And you look at the three little silvery holes that are closest to the edge of the board, and that's where those three is where you insert the three little legs that are on the switch, and that's where we will solder them on there. And you put it in there like so, and you will apply solder on the back part and put it in there permanently. So give me a sec and we'll get back to you. Hi there, we are back now again, and I have done the following since we last spoke. I added the switch, as you can see here, and I've added the two wires from the pigtail from the battery connector. This is where you would connect your battery to. And obviously you insert them here, and then you turn these with a screwdriver, with a Phillips or a flathead, as long as it fits in there, and you twist them until it gets nice and tight, and it won't come off. Stay on there. If you look on the back side, I have not trimmed these little legs off. You will have to trim these off using wire cutters. The reason being is that you don't want first of all, it's not very good looking whenever these are sticking out, and if you leave these on here, they might touch each other and short and burn one of the components, either being this, or something, which either case is bad. You don't want to do that. So what we would do here is we would get some wire cutters, and we would just cut these. What's really important is whenever using wire cutters, use safety glasses. And because whenever you use wire cutters, these tend to jump, and you don't want to get one of those in your eye. So you hold on to it, and then you snip it off. And you do that same thing to all of them. Now, as you can see, it's very nice, very nice. Now the first test to see if we got this correctly would be to grab your battery, which here we are using this battery, and you connect it. Do a nice connection, and then we come over and then we flip the switch, and these two little lights turn on. So that's awesome, we did all that correct. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start assembling the intelligence section, and then we'll do this area. Okay?